Thank you, Mr. McDonald, for being here today. When I came in earlier, I almost didn't recognize Mr. McDonald because, frankly, this is the way that we're used to seeing him out there on the ranch. Glad to have you. I don't suspect I'll be seeing you in a suit much more often down in Cochise County, but we're absolutely delighted that he's here. Bill is a fifth-generation rancher for southern Arizona, and his family's been ranching their land for over 100 years, which is a very long period of time. Bill's going to talk to us about the reality of being on the U.S.-Mexico border, and frankly, all our panelists have been terrific, but it's very abstract to talk about what it's like to be on the border compared to actually your livelihood, your lives, your friends, your neighbors, your family. And in fact, in reading Mr. McDonald's comments, he talks about what the legacy is really to his family and whether or not he wants to have his family continuing to live on this area because it has changed so much over the years. Mr. McDonald's a graduate of ASU. He began managing his ranch full-time in 1975. He is the past president of the local Cattlemen's Association and has served as the executive board of the Arizona Cattle Growers Association, who has been very active in this immigration issue and this discussion for border security and have put forward a very comprehensive plan. Mr. McDonald is also the founder of the Malpai Organization, a borderlands group that's designed to preserve the hundreds of thousands of miles of land in perpetuity. This is land that needs to be protected and preserved and continue to be ranched with all of the growth that we're having in southern Arizona. But I'm pleased that he has come all the way to really talk about firsthand. I mean, again, it's abstract to talk about Merida, what's happening, all the Border Patrol, and we're going to hear from him invaluable information, his direct insights of what it is really to live and work along the U.S.-Mexico border. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. McDonald.
Okay. Mr. McDonald, we're all ears.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chairman Engel, and thank you for the introduction, Congresswoman Giffords, Chairman Cuellar, Ranking Member Miller and Mack, and distinguished members of the subcommittee staff and guests. I appreciate this opportunity to talk about the impact of border crossing on rural life in southeastern Arizona and southwestern New Mexico along the border, which is where we operate our ranch. For most of the 20th century, certainly in my lifetime, most of the 20th century at least, although this has been a difficult place to make a living, it's been a peaceful place, a beautiful place to live. The borderline itself is a casual thing, as I think one of our member of the committee mentioned earlier. Ranch hands and seasonal farmer workers would go back and forth, and that included Americans working in Mexico at times. Nobody paid a great deal of attention to it, frankly. About 25 years ago, with the completion of a highway between Janos, Chihuahua, and Agua Prieta, Sonora in Mexico, it suddenly provided much greater access for people from other places further south in Mexico and other countries to get to our area. And we begin to see an uptick in drug smuggling and other activity, but it was not really an oppressive stage for those of us who lived there. Around 9 years ago, after 9/11, when there was much tighter enforcement at ports of entry and ramping up of enforcement in other areas, we started to see a real heavy flow of activity, and resulted in mountains of trash in the landscape. Water is our lifeline out there, as you can imagine, in the arid Southwest for our animals and as well as for the wildlife. And we would lose thousands of gallons of water storage when people would leave valves on or cut water lines or break off floats and water troughs. It still goes on. Wildfires get started on a regular basis. Gates left down, fences are cut. There are trails made by human traffic going over the same places to the point that we have gully erosion as a result. Our roads are torn up from the use of the Border Patrol almost practically exclusively now. We use them a small percentage of the time in comparison. And these are significant costs to us in equipment repairs and extra days of work, not to mention the negative impact it has on our resource and the landscape. Well, we've hung in there and kept hoping it would get better. It's gotten worse. In the last 3 to 5 years, the character of the crossers has begun to change, although we still have poor people coming across just looking to better their lives, and we certainly have empathy for them, even though they are illegal. We now have these individuals who are often dressed in dark clothing, and they have their water jugs painted black, and we know that they're doing their work at night. They're arrogant, they're brazen, they're often armed, and they go north at night with their cargo, whether it happen to be human beings or drugs or a combination. And when they leave the cargo off and they head south, they often engage in criminal activities. We've had a big uptick in break-ins, increasingly with people still in their homes. And we live in an east-west facing canyon, which we're just lucky. We have two big mountains on either side of us. It's hard to get to us, and yet we've had a couple of break-ins in the last year, and that compares to none 100 years previous. And people in north-south facing canyons and the foothills and the valleys, the number of break-ins there, when you consider the population per capita, it's huge. Things reached a new level with the murder of Rob Krantz 2 months ago today. My very good friend and ranching neighbor. His family and ours have been neighbors for 100 years. The tracks of the killer led into Mexico. The shell casings found there indicate that it was possibly from a gun that had been stolen in the area the night before. Rob was doing nothing more than checking the waters in his pasture. Could have happened to me. Where he was killed was just a mile from our fence. Since that tragedy, we've seen some changes in the Border Patrol's efforts, I think, but the activity continues unabated. Just last week, a bird watcher was stopped from going into one of the canyons by an armed drug smuggler who just told him he shouldn't go in there. Forest Service employees in the area are told that they have to go out in pairs. We don't have that luxury on our ranches. There's an ongoing effort of intimidation, in my opinion, for the ranch just to our south, which is still in the United States, of vandalizing infrastructure to that ranch and trying to force that individual to leave. In Mexico, we hear from our Mexican counterparts that when that happens, people with ties to drug activity usually come in control of the ranch. Our own government's policy of funneling border crossers into the most rural and formidable terrain is responsible for what we're now enduring. Our area has become a de facto demilitarized zone, so to speak. This is the place that I've poured my heart and soul into my whole life, where we raised our daughter and our families lived since 1907. But as the Congresswoman mentioned, I'm not sure I want my grandchildren to be raised there now. What can be done? I'm running out of time, but there's 4 things. Communications are abysmal down there, whether you're talking about landowner to agents or agent to agent or agent to other law enforcement agencies. We need much more technology, including mobile surveillance systems, and we don't really want to steal them from the northern border or from other sectors. We need them built and we need them out there. More air support, light helicopters, even C-130s. Horse patrol units are very effective out there. We don't have nearly enough of that. And we also need, as mentioned, the agents to be on the border. We need to look at deterrence rather than just how many drugs and people we can capture. I think the Merida Agreement is tremendous, and it's a long-term solution, but it's long-term. Immigration reform I had high hopes for. I don't know when that's going to happen, actually get a bill through that would do more good than harm. But there's no debate about what the federal government's responsibility is. And on behalf of those who live near the border, I respectfully request that the federal government do its job now, secure the border, protect our citizens from foreigners who enter and mean to do us harm. Thank you.